See everybody this afternoon on a beautiful Sunday. Beautiful sunny afternoon. It feels like Sunday or something. Nap time. I'm going to call the Senate Ag and Consumer Affairs Committee meeting to order. We have a quorum. Appreciate everybody being here. Senator Harper, would you bless us before we start, please, sir?
Let's pray. Father God, thank you for this day, and thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you for the opportunity we have to serve our state in the capacities that we each individually do, and pray that you continue to give us wisdom and guidance as we make decisions in this committee, as well as we make decisions throughout the remainder of this session. Thank you for this day, and pray that you give us safe travels on our way homes whenever we leave the Capitol today and the rest of the week. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. All right. We are going to hear two bills today, House Bill 508 and Senate Bill 578, which is my bill. But before that, I'm going to appoint a couple of subcommittees to look at some House bills. House Bill 1175, which deals with raw milk. I'm going to ask Lee Anderson to chair that subcommittee, Senator Jackson and Senator Summers to serve on that subcommittee. House Bill 1175, Senator Anderson, Jackson, and Summers. If you all will get with Kai, she'll help you coordinate a meeting time and send out the announcements. And if you'll get a report back to us pretty quickly, as you know, our clock's running out. Then House Bill 1384 has to do with using untreated lumber, I believe, and something to do with the building code. I'm going to ask Senator Goodman to chair that, Senator Burns, and Senator Ramon to serve on that. So Kai will help you with getting a meeting time in place. She'll coordinate that with the Secretary of Senate's office. And if y'all will meet next week and come back with a recommendation for the full committee, please, I would appreciate that. All right. House Bill 508, Representative Casey Carpenter of the 4th. And I think we're working off of LC 364672.
All right.
Yes, sir, we're ready.
Appreciate you guys having me. House Bill 508 is a really simple bill broken down into two categories. The first piece is what they call truth in music advertising. And what this bill seeks to do, you probably heard it on the Senate floor because there's been some versions that have come out on this, but basically says in order for you to represent yourself as a member of a music group, you actually have to have the legal right to do that or be an original member. So there's a lot of folks out there that are traveling. Let's say I start a band, we start playing a lot of Led Zeppelin songs. Instead of coming out and saying I'm a Led Zeppelin cover band, I say I'm actually Led Zeppelin and I perform. This would make sure that that's not occurring in the state of Georgia. There's a lot of older bands that a lot of the members have died off, and their family members have those rights, but people are touring as that band. And so this would seek to eliminate that piece through state legislation. There's 35 other states, I believe, that already have this, and this would give the groups the private right calls to action to address that issue. And then the second piece is deals with digital streaming and making sure that all digital streaming apps that are charging fees for people to listen to music and or playing people's music, that they are in fact paying royalties. And so this would allow, it would make sure that they express on their app or on their website exactly how to get in contact with somebody so that the royalty companies, BMI and others, can go after and make sure these artists are getting paid. So it's basically just an Artist Protection Act that would help both touring artists as well as people getting paid on the royalties piece. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Senator Anderson has a question.
How many Senate bills have y'all passed?
You know, I'm not real sure, but when those Senate bills come to my committee, I blow them out. So you can check with Senator Mullis and Senator Chancellor. They hit the ground running when they come to creative arts. So that be rest assured, that thing flies off the shelf.
Let me ask you this. Would this bill put Senator Goodman out of business?
I don't think so. I don't think he claims to be Buddy Holly, although sometimes he kind of looks like Buddy Holly.
He's Elvis all the way.
Oh, I forgot about that. Hey, thank God for that. Your wife will probably send me a Christmas card. I forgot.
Any other questions for Representative Carpenter? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Representative, for bringing the bill. Just a question on digital streaming.
Yes, sir.
Could you help me understand a little bit how you're going to be able to enforce that expectation?
That's okay. So most of the big guys are already doing it, right? The Pandoras, the Spotifys, those guys are remitting royalties. What this is, there's a lot of, I call them pirate stations out there. And so what it would do is it would just require them to list certain information on their landing page about how to get in contact with them. So it just gives BMI and them another tool to be able to access and find out who is actually in charge of this app and how to get those funds from them.
Tell us who BMI is, excuse me.
I'm sorry, BMI. So it's just one of the music folks that help get royalties paid.
Just a quick follow-up,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. So the provider of the streaming content would have to basically identify themselves.
That's right.
And then any artist whose product is distributed that way would have the opportunity to pursue royalties. Is that correct?
They could, or the arms like BMI that handle that stuff for them would do it as well.
Fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any others? All right. Chairman Carpenter, let's say the swinging medallions, for example. I don't know whether or not there are any original members still in the swinging medallions, or you know, the Commodores were at the Georgia National Fair last year, and they had some of the sons that were there. I guess since they've performed with the Commodores, those sons could continue.
That's right, and if they have the legal right to do so as well. So a lot of times, you know, if that's passed on from father to son type stuff.
So that's still allowed.
Yeah, it's still allowed. Yes, sir.
So they can either have performed in the original band,
or have the legal right to do so.
Or have the legal right.
Correct.
And sometimes I guess there's situations where they performed in the original band, but they don't have the legal right to use the band name. This does not supersede that, does it?
Correct. That's right. So if they've sold the rights off, etc. Right.
Okay. Senator Harper, you know a good bit about music. Do you have any concerns or questions or?
I'll ask him a question which I feel like I know the answer to this question.
Well, I hope I do too. We'll have to call it a day then.
Chairman Carpenter, is it not true that the underlying bill does not prevent any band to play any cover music?
That's correct.
Part of their regular routine. Is it further not true that it doesn't prevent bands to play as long as they list that they are a tribute
That is correct.
to a certain group? So they can still say, you know, such and such swinging medallion tribute band.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. So yeah, that's completely legal. So I use that Led Zeppelin. So Zoso is a tribute band that travels and plays Led Zeppelin music, and so they would still be able to operate because they're not claiming to be Led Zeppelin.
So I support the bill. I think it's a good measure to move forward. Being a musician myself, I think this is important. I don't think we're gonna have anybody impersonating Tyler Harper, but we're working to get there.
If I could learn how to play the guitar, I could probably look like Tyler Harper on stage, but I don't know that I could play like Tyler Harper on stage.
All right, one more. I got another question.
Yeah, thank you. I just was going to ask a question, piggybacking off of Senator Harper's. If let's say I'm a cover band or I'm a wedding band and I play obviously cover songs, can I put on my website my performance of, let's say, a Led Zeppelin song and you know, as as like my ability to advertise what I can do for you, would that still be allowed?
I think so. I think you just have to be careful on the on the royalty piece. So my suggestion for you, I believe that rule is less than 30 seconds. So you could theoretically play a 30-second portion of that, not owe royalties on your website.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's probably somebody in the audience that could correct that, but I think that 30 seconds is the window.
All right, we've got another question, and we actually have somebody signed up to speak in favor of the bill, and I bet she knows more about all this than most of us. So go ahead, Senator Goodman.
Representative, is it true that Elvis Presley Enterprises has contacted you about this, and you were just simply trying to put me out of business?
We actually call this the Russ Goodman out of business bill. On the House side, we're under the veil in the Senate, but on the House side, that was the original intent of the bill. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Representative. We have Mayla Sharma with the Georgia Music Partners and Recording Academy. Welcome, Mayla. Did I pronounce that right?
Close enough, Mala.
Mala, welcome.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee members. I appreciate you guys letting me speak in favor of this bill, and thanks to Chairman Harper for bringing this important measure in front of you guys. As I think he did a great job of explaining the bill. It's really essentially both the Truth in Music Advertising and the True Origins of Good Act are consumer protection. They're important for that reason, but they're also creator and artist protectors as well. So the artists, they work and their entire career to kind of build their brand and want to make sure that they protect it, whether it is when they're performing live or when they are, when their music is being streamed. And the True Origins of Good Act is really that labeling of the address is to make sure that there is no illegal distribution of artists' music, which happens quite frequently, so that there is recourse to find those streaming services and to be able to shut them down or recoup any losses. So that's it essentially. And we've had, it happens more often than we'd like to, we'd like it to. And for this reason, I think it's just really important that we pass this. Both these bills, or both portions of this bill, have been passed. As Chairman Carpenter said, the TEMA portion, the true, that portion is in 35 states, and the True Origin of Goods has been passed in around 6 states. So for Georgia to be the #1 state to do music business, we really need to create that safe environment. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. All right, any questions? Mr. Chairman.
Hello, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate you coming and honoring us with your presence, and I certainly appreciate what you've done for the Georgia music industry.
Thank you. Let's
over the
see,
years.
Warren. There are 3 people who hadn't voted for me in this committee, so I'm a little nervous. I didn't say you. But thank you so much. And let me tell you on behalf of myself and Mala and everybody else here, Georgia is the music capital of America, I think, with all the great musicians that have come up from Ray Charles to Johnny Mercer to Tyler Harper to Wayne Walker and John Berry and Alan Jackson and
Otis Redding.
Oh, no, yeah, all those. But I'm thinking the one in Paulding County now, Travis Tritt and
Martin Monahan.
And Martin Monahan. All right. Okay, ditto. And there's so many, just so many. So if we can, look, remember when we did the tax incentive for the movie industry? It took us 3 years to get it right. And who would have ever thought that we'd be the #1 place to do movies? And I actually think that Georgia can be the #1 place for music as well, and production, and tours starting. So
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. That bill actually went to finance, though.
No, well, any bill supports all of that.
But this
One too.
is a good
Are you
one.
in finance?
I'm not in finance.
Well, how'd you know it's in finance, Mr.
I'm
Chairman?
on committee on assignments.
Oh. Smart ass. Oh, anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Oh, no, I don't care. In fact, I've never cared. But thank you.
But seriously, you've championed the Georgia music industry and to great effect, and we thank you for that.
Thank you. I just play a radio. I don't play anything else.
Yep. All right. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you. You got? Yeah, I'm ready. Got a motion by Senator Harper, second by Senator Jackson. She beat you to it. Sorry. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, it passed. Good luck in House in Senate rules.
Well, I feel pretty good about it right now, but that could change.
It ain't looking good right now unless y'all pass some Senate bills over there.
I don't control that conversation.
Well, yeah. All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Oh, who's the sponsor, Casey?
Well, I was Chancellor was going to carry it, but if Mullis wants to, either way. Or Tyler. Tyler can do it. Whoa, hey, that's fine. Hey.
Y'all decide. Just let us know, Tyler.
Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect, Gary. I'll let him know. All right, you the man. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have an interesting bill that I was asked to introduce to start a conversation. There's been some work already done on it to improve it, so we've got a committee substitute, and it has to do with, I'm just going to sit here and tell you a little bit about it, and then we've got some folks here that'll get into it in more detail and talk about where they see, why they see a need for this legislation. But COVID, of course, affected everybody and had a lot of people working from home, a lot of people displaced from their jobs, a lot of people looking at their career and their lifestyle and kind of reflecting on what they wanted to do with their life. And it was kind of a chance, I guess, for a lot of people to kind of reset. And so you had a growing interest in working from home and from people that are creative, coming up with new businesses, and we've recently, with legislation, allowed home baking, baked goods from home to be allowed, and there is some folks that want to be able to kind of expand on that and allow us to regulate home kitchens at the state level, to give uniformity throughout the state on the regulation of this potential enterprise. It'd be regulated by the Georgia Department of Agriculture. The bill does really, I guess you'd say, preempt local health departments from regulating these enterprises. It's crafted pretty narrowly as to what type of products could be cooked and sold, and there's a lot of safety measures built into the legislation. But again, at this point, as you all know, it's a Senate bill, and we've already passed crossover, so we're just wanting to start a conversation, get educated on this issue, and see if it's something we want to put into law in the future, or if there's enough interest, I guess somebody on the committee could try to figure out a way to get it done this year. But so I'm going to call on David Owen. He's with a company called Chef, S-H-E-F, and he's going to tell us why he thinks we need this measure in Georgia. And Jay, you're welcome to sit with him if you'd like to, Jay Morgan. If y'all would both introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background, and Jay, tell us who you work for and everything.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this opportunity to have this important discussion. Jay Morgan, representing Chef today, and as you guys know, I have a deep history with the agribusiness community here in Georgia, growing up in Talbot County. and being involved in 4-H club work for years, and the former chairman of the Georgia 4-H Foundation. So when David came to me with this idea, I was like, this is all just a great extension of Georgia Grown, and just another way for Georgia to distinguish itself as the #1 state in the country to do business. And with that, I'll let David introduce himself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Chairman, also for introducing this legislation, and to the committee for hearing us today, and also to the department for engaging with us in various conversations over the last several weeks now to result in the substitute that's before you today. So really quickly, just wanted to introduce myself, David Owen, and Chef, which is an online marketplace which ideally we want to empower people to cook for their neighbors and their friends, and to provide the services and technology to connect people who would like to enjoy home-cooked food in their communities. And this bill really, as the chairman noted, expands on the existing cottage food law on the books here in the state of Georgia, expands the categories of foods that somebody could cook from their homes and sell, and creates additional rules around safety, and also potentially around the scale, so as to clearly distinguish this activity from higher intensity uses like a restaurant or even a mobile food cart. But really, and just wanted to talk through a few of the reasons behind why we think this is really a good thing for the state of Georgia and a good thing for people here. First and foremost, as Jay said, supporting Georgia agriculture. This is truly farm-to-table opportunity for folks to feature food that's grown here, to make it themselves, and to serve it and sell it to their communities. We know as a result of COVID over the last several years, but certainly even prior to that, that this is something that is going on in a lot of communities around the state already. You can log on to any number of different, Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or other places and see that people are cooking for their communities. And during COVID, as a matter of necessity, I think this is something which happened even more and more. So appreciate the opportunity to talk about creating some clear, simple and safe rules for this to occur. Really, I think this also provides an important economic opportunity to folks. The overwhelming majority of cottage food producers here and around the country are women. Over 80% of folks who are doing this are women. A large number of folks in different communities, be it immigrant communities or others around the state as well, to benefit from this. And a lot of folks use it to supplement income, either to make extra money in addition to the jobs that they have, or if they're unable to work outside the home, be it for family and childcare obligations or other reasons, this is a way for people to do something that they're passionate about, to use their talent to share it with their community, and also to make some extra funds doing so. Bless you. And I think third, really, this is a really innovative and interesting economic development opportunity. We know that a lot of folks who are doing this want to open brick and mortar restaurants. They want to start a food truck. The average cost of starting a new restaurant is about $375,000. Many folks lack both those funds and also the access to that startup capital. So cooking from home gives them an opportunity to raise that capital, but also to experiment with all the things that you would have to do running a restaurant, knowing that more than 50% of food businesses fail within the first year of operation. This is a way for people to play around with menu creation and recipes and demand, and understand all those aspects of running a food business before they move into committing all that capital towards a business and increase the likelihood of succeeding. And it's a way to help encourage those businesses without actually requiring it's basically an economic development incentive plan for these types of businesses without necessarily requiring state funds and resources to do it. So we're very excited about the opportunity to have this discussion, and again appreciate this committee and the department and the chair for giving us the opportunity to start this dialogue here today. And just a couple of other quick points. We've talked with the department and others about some amendments and wanted to ensure that food safety is sort of a critical consideration here. The substitute does empower the department to adopt food safety rules, requirements for anyone who would get a permit to use ServSafe, which is a program that is a national program but affiliated with the Restaurant Association, administered through a partnership there. We also did adjust the permit fee to ensure that the department would have sufficient resources to enforce the program. I think in the substitute it's now $400 for the permit. And so again, just wanted to point out those issues. Certainly open for any questions, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
All right, how about some questions for Mr. Owen? Okay, Senator Hatchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two questions. Number one, will this require a home kitchen to get an LLC or some type of like incorporation or incorporate in some way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't believe that the legislation specifies that they would have to create some sort of an entity, but obviously somebody may decide to operate for whatever reasons to form a business entity. I think they may have to get a business license if they're engaged in, for tax reasons and others if they're selling food.
Okay. And the second question, I guess on line 43, it says a home kitchen operation shall not produce, prepare, or package any, and it says milk or milk product. Does that include like in the ingredients if they were to bake a cake, or they couldn't?
Good question. So no, I don't believe that it should, right? I think the intent here was to make sure that we weren't allowing folks under a home kitchen license to process food,
Gotcha.
to process milk.
Okay.
I know it's a whole separate debate that sounds like y'all are engaged in.
Yeah.
Certainly wanting to stay away from that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Senator Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions in line here. I know you're charging the fee, the $400 fee, and I'm just curious how you came up with that number, just curious. And that second part of that question is I know you're requiring it, they have to have a license issued by the commissioner. Like restaurants have these things hanging on their window every month. They get their, the $199, $98. How does that fall into a home kitchen? That's the first part of my question, if you don't mind.
Sure. So on the fee, I think the original, when it was drafted by council, had $100 as the fee, and that seemed low. Certainly relying on the department to provide feedback about what cost recovery administration costs would be. We suggested this higher fee, and certainly still open to discussion, based on what kind of a survey of other states and the fees that they've imposed on similar programs. And this falls sort of squarely on the low to medium end of where that is. On the license question, everybody would have to obtain a license in order to use this new program. Because these aren't customer serving businesses, no one's coming and going from a home. I don't believe there's a posting requirement in someone's home, but they would have to have the permit and presumably make it available upon inspection if that were to occur.
Follow up?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. That permit would be a monthly issued permit like restaurants get?
I believe it's an annual permit in the legislation as drafted.
So they wouldn't have to have the monthly is what you're saying under this?
I believe so.
I hadn't got that far through it yet.
Yeah.
And while you're thinking on that question here, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, the inspectors, I know Kisher and Tyler, Senator Harper might be able to help us in this. How many of these restaurants would there, or cottages would there be, and how do we have the inspectors to inspect this stuff? Is there enough inspectors to? Is the health department doing it, or is there just going to be a special unit?
I may defer to the department relative to how their thoughts around enforcement. In some states, you have affiliation agreements between, say, the ag department and the health department to conduct things that may, if a program is administered by one, but the people power exists in another. So I think that's certainly something to explore relative to making sure that there's the fees that would cover those costs.
And we have enough inspectors. I mean, there's enough out there to handle. I mean, are we talking 100? Are we talking 2,000? I mean, what do you estimate?
Don't have a clear sense of exactly how many, but I certainly think there's a lot of interest. If we look at, I don't believe there's a permit requirement for cottage foods, for instance, so we don't know exactly how many folks are operating currently, but definitely know, even prior to the pandemic, that there's substantial interest amongst people in cooking from home.
And the last question, Mr. Chairman, if they don't obtain their licenses or whatever, either the health department or whoever the statutory person in that area would be able to go shut them down or stop them from selling food. Is that
That's the idea, that a permit is required in order
Somebody's
to
gonna
engage.
police this, that's what I'm getting
But
at.
Senator Summers, to be clear, this is not going to
Right.
involve your local
Health department.
health department
I
the
know.
way it's currently written.
That's what I was
It's
getting
going
at. How do
to
you
involve
police
the
it?
Georgia Department of Agriculture,
That's what
and
I
they
was-
would have to have additional staff, clearly, to be able to administer the program, and we'd have to appropriate the money to do it.
That was
if
that was my final question,
All
Mr.
right,
Chairman.
thank you. All right, Senator Jackson.
Thank you for bringing this. I had the same question about milk or milk products. We're in the South, so I wanted to make sure butter was still okay to use. That's really important. But I'm curious. You know, I grew up in a town where there's a grandmother who makes Sunday plates and has been serving Sunday plates for years, longer than I've been alive. And so, what's the incentive for her to start giving the Department of Ag, no offense, $400 every year?
I think it's a great question. It's a great point, because this is something which is an activity that's gone on and is going on in many communities already. And so, without getting the auntie in trouble,
Right.
this is an activity which, if you make that plate and you give it away, it's fine. If you charge somebody $5 for it, you've now encountered potentially an issue. And so I think this effort is starting the conversation around, how we would clearly bring that activity into, out into the light, knowing that a lot of that is already occurring in many communities around the state.
Yeah, just one follow-up. I certainly support this type of legislation. I'm very familiar with the cottage license process for my own cottage. But I do want to make sure that we don't in any way criminalize the grandmothers and the aunties who have been feeding our communities for a very long time. And many of them, while they may be charging $5 a plate, they're not making money. They're simply feeding their community. And I just want to make sure as we move forward, we think about this carefully so that we don't criminalize those aunties in any way.
Thank you. Senator Anderson.
Thank you for bringing this, and I'm always looking for new ways to create new jobs, but carry me down the road of liability.
Specifically, if there were, an issue that occurred.
Food poison, or where's the liability? Who's?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, and what some states have done is they've considered this is requiring, say, liability insurance that would cover things that might occur. Either imposing that on individual cooks or, say, on websites that maybe facilitate those transactions, so that there's clearly protection there in case something does go wrong. I can say that in the jurisdictions that have been allowing for this activity now for the longest, there have been no significant food safety, and I'll knock on wood as I say that, but there have been no significant food safety issues in the counties or states in different parts of the country that have home kitchen laws have been operational for several years now. But with that said, I think it's entirely appropriate to discuss and potentially even just empower the department to issue additional regulations to ensure that liability is addressed, so that there isn't some lack of liability that might or lack of coverage or protection if something were to occur.
You good? Senator Rahman, did you have a question?
Well, I don't have a question. I think you already answered most of my question. Basically, I was concerned what my fellow senator mentioned about the aunt and auntie, in rural Georgia. I spent a lot of time in middle Georgia, and I've seen in the community serving food and stuff. I just want to make sure they are not penalized. And the question that I had about, you already answered that. How you come up with $400? I think it's a little too high to me. And but that's just a general comment. And just to mention something, Senator, from 13, you say when you go to the restaurant outside, see, those are not monthly, those are not normally quarterly. So we can probably work it out something in these bills, eventually maybe yearly, some kind of yearly inspection or something like that, because you don't burden that when you get a license. Then also you have to realize when you apply for license, you gotta have an EIN number, taxes and stuff like that. So we have to work it out in this bill. I think it's a good bill. Eventually, if we can work it out, something like that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Senator Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up, market is a question in my mind. Do we have a reasonable idea of what the current environment is versus what you anticipate the environment will be in 3 to 5?
It's a really good question. It's hard to say because, as you can see,
What is the experience like say?
There's definitely growth. There's a lot of interest. I think it's similar to other states. We know that there are communities where this is definitely occurring in various ways. This informal economy exists. In places where it's now more mature and it's been regulated, we definitely see growth. And part of that is the last few years we've been living through COVID, and so this has been one critical way that communities have been feeding each other, particularly those, in food deserts or who lack, better access to grocery stores or even without restaurants that are operating during those periods of time.
Mr. Chairman, one more question.
Yes, sir.
Would this normally be under an individual purchase situation, one-off purchases, or would there be potential subscription types of services?
It's an interesting question. I think it would depend on everyone involved's business model, how they chose to operate. I think I could certainly see either of those, making sense. The way that we, as one particular company, operate, there's no subscription model, and it's not on demand. So people who are cooking need the time to get the order and then do the shopping, find the groceries, and then prepare the meals and deliver them. So, it's usually a couple of days of lag time between order and sale. But I'm sure there are other folks who will operate in a different way.
Okay, sure. Now, we got somebody signed up to speak in addition to David. So I do have two quick, let's make these questions quick, please. Senator Jackson.
Thank you. I know we're in the process of kind of perfecting this, and so I wonder if we might consider, like with a gate card, you have to sell a certain amount of money in order to qualify for a gate card. I wonder if this home kitchen might have to do something with, if you hit a certain amount of revenue, then you have to get a license, or I hope we can just explore some different alternatives here that allow for, kind of the local homegrown grandmother who she ain't trying to make money here, to be able to continue to operate as she has for the last 48 Sundays. Whereas for folks who want to be like on Chef and want to have this kind of more larger venue, who really are running a business, we might have higher standards for them. That's just something I'd invite us to consider.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. David, if you don't mind, and I should ask you this a while ago, in rural Georgia, where I'm from, we have Rotaries, Lions, and Kiwanis clubs, et cetera, and most of the meals are prepared by ladies' organizations, whether it be Daughters of the Confederacy, whether it be, Wamadorsha Club, whether it be all these different clubs. And each one of those ladies bring in, like, somebody bring in the meat, somebody bring in the veggies, somebody bring in this and this. And I'm not going to go down there and tell them I voted to charge them $400 to serve these clubs. I don't want them to get caught up in that, because they're probably all in their 70s and 80s anyway, and it wouldn't go very well. I can just be honest with you. And they've been doing this for the last 50, 60 years this way. So we don't want them to get caught up in this. If you see where I'm going with this?
Absolutely, and I think that there's definitely a way to craft this, and perhaps also along the lines that your colleague suggested, to ensure that we're not, this is not an effort to subject a bunch of folks who are doing something they've always done to additional regulation. It's really how do we enable people who want to start playing with entrepreneurialism in their home to do so, and sort of create more economic opportunity for them. I do believe, though, I don't want to speak out of turn, and there's definitely somebody here who knows this better than I do, that there are exemptions in the current code around certain types of nonprofits or other events to some of these rules. So that may also be something that currently hopefully applies.
Yeah, I know Senator Kirkpatrick has passed legislation before related to the charitable organizations. David, if you would get us some information on what other states actually have a statute related to this, and what kind of participation they have, and maybe a copy of their law, that'd be helpful. And thank you very much. Before I call on Ms. Bremmer, I want to introduce a constituent of mine. We have a real honor today to have the new Chancellor to the University System of Georgia, former state senator, former pro tem of the Senate, former governor of the state of Georgia, and former secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Governor Perdue, glad you're here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my senator, it's good to be in here. I'm just trying to get my feet back on the ground and learn a little bit, so I'll leave you.
Great to have you.
Very much. Glad to
Thank
be
you.
here.
All right, Ms. Bremmer with the Georgia Restaurant Association. Now, you didn't mark for or against.
I'll explain it. Thank you, Chairman Walker, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Karen Bremmer. I'm the president and CEO of the Georgia Restaurant Association. I am proudly serving my 47th year in this industry that creates so much opportunity for people in the state of Georgia and the United States. I was a professional restaurateur. I started as an hourly worker, was a manager, an owner, an operator. I was president of a restaurant chain based out of Atlanta, and 11 years ago, I stepped into this role to represent the industry. Prior to that, I gave 20 years of my life to volunteer leadership in the state of Georgia to help professionalize our industry and create rules to protect our employees and our customers in terms of food safety and basic safety procedures in our restaurants. And so with that, first off, I want to say our industry supports innovation and creativity. I mean, think about the food scene here in Georgia. I know the 40 years I've been here in Georgia, the innovation and the recognition of Atlanta being a food city in not just the United States, but worldwide. We are known for that. And so we are supportive of new ideas and new concepts coming into the state. But I think first and foremost, what people need to be concerned about is safety, food safety. I started working with former Senator Don Balfour in 1991 to get the state to adopt food service certification for managers and operators in restaurants. And people would say, "You're a restaurateur, why do you want another law?" And that's because I was a professional restaurateur. I wanted to see that, that our industry had some sort of training and certification if you're going to put food in people's bodies, okay? And the restaurant industry, along with food production here in Georgia, operates under the FDA Food Code. FDA Food Code was established by the U.S. Department of Public Safety in 1934, and I think it was a result of people dying from botulism from home canned foods and trichinosis from livestock not being raised properly. There were a lot of issues back then. And here in Georgia, that is what we operate by. I didn't bring my giant USDA food code with me. I think many of y'all have seen that. Half of that's for ag and food production, half of that is for restaurants. In my industry specifically, restaurateurs spend a tremendous amount of money to open a business in terms of permits and fees. And the number of $365,000 in Atlanta, the average price to open to put a restaurant together is going to be upwards closer to $1 million. There are many fees that a lot of people don't realize or take into consideration. Things like impact fees when you are hooking up to a master sewer, usually about $25,000, because there has to be assurance that your lines, sewage lines, are large enough to deal with the grease and everything else. There's also permits and licenses to actually have a grease trap so that you can deep fry food. The inspections, as you alluded to earlier, are based on the complexity of your menu as to how many times a year you are inspected. If you have a live lobster tank, you'll get to see them all the time. Or if you do sushi, you get to see the inspectors all the time. And on an annual basis, here in Atlanta, a full-service restaurant will spend about $65,000 in licenses, fees, and permits. So with that being said, I've done some research on this company. I think it's a great idea. It states on their website that in certain jurisdictions they need to do this in a shared kitchen or a what I call a commissary kitchen that is licensed to do that. And since 2015, we have had that type of concept here in Georgia, where if I want to start a tuna casserole business, I can go rent a space and I can start producing and manufacturing my tuna casserole, and then the means of delivering it can be a third party if that's what I choose to do. Again, we have one of the safest states for food and foodborne illnesses. I sit on the Georgia Food Protection Task Force and a number of other safety organizations. And quite frankly, when the scientists are doing their presentations, the foodborne illness outbreaks are generally, and I hate to say this, but church functions. And but as David said earlier, there are exemptions for not-for-profits for raising money. Somebody doing a Friday night fish fry or whatever the case may be. I would suggest that this needs to be studied very carefully and very closely to ensure food safety in our state. Restaurateurs have to go through a lot of hoops, as well as agriculture. Since we had the Food Modernization Act of 2010 by President Obama, there are much stricter guidelines for food manufacturing and food production and agriculture. And if we want to continue to have a safe food universe, a safe food universe in the state of Georgia, I think this should be studied very, very carefully. And again, my industry makes tremendous investments in their communities, tremendous investments in supporting their communities. Who's the first person you ask for a prize for a Little League team? It's a restaurant. That's who do you reach out to when you need something for your raffle? It's a restaurant. 99% of all restaurants give back to their communities, and they pay a hefty price to have the privilege of having a business in those communities. With
Karen,
that,
thank you. That's good food for thought. Karen, I want to commend you on the great job you do for your industry, and I want to commend the Georgia restaurant industry on their resilience and their creativity to survive the COVID-19 pandemic and continue to figure out a way to feed us. And I also want to congratulate the restaurants that recently received the prestigious James Beard Award. I think we had 3 maybe in the metro area, and that's a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a great, if you're a foodie, Atlanta's a great place to be. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Georgia.
Right. And just in closing, I want to thank all of y'all. I want to thank everybody here for supporting our restaurants over the past 2 years. Every call I have with my restaurants, every Zoom I do, I thank them for helping us to get back to normal, because going to restaurants is normal behavior. It's what we love to do as Americans. So thank you all very much for helping the restaurants to stay in business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? All right, we've got the charge to the 2 subcommittees. Monday, we're going to have Freedom to Farm. It's going to be a public testimony hearing for Freedom to Farm. Part of the bill references the federal definition of God almighty, I can't remember. How do you pronounce it, Lee and Tyler? CAFOs. Oh. And so Kai's going to get you all the definition of CAFOs, because it references that in the bill. But y'all be looking at that over the weekend, the Freedom to Farm Act, and we'll have a hearing on that Monday in public testimony. We only have an hour allotted, so that's all we're going to be able to give it. And then after that, we're going to consider input from the committee and then have a vote on it. This is my plan at probably the next meeting.
So hearing only is what you're saying?
Yeah, hearing with public testimony. If you remember, we didn't take any public testimony last Monday. It was Monday. Anyway, thank you all. Did you, Senator Burns? Okay. Thank you all. Everybody that have a good weekend if I don't see you tomorrow, and I may not.
Why not?